into doing it by people at the BBC who offered me some terms that I couldn't refuse at the time, I got really interested, however, in the course of doing it, and realised that my abstract philosophy, some of which is contained in that little book on beauty, it would be of no use to anyone if it couldn't translate itself into images and personal presentations of the kind that I tried in that film. So today I'm going to come back to some of the philosophical thoughts behind what I was talking about then, and address the whole question of faking, how we get through life by faking, and how faking is sometimes something which is unavoidable and which has a whole artistic tradition behind it. And I think to understand just what it means to be a fake is something which is really important to us in the world in which we live. Because after all, we know that there are occasions when we've got to do it, but we also know that there is a deep need in all of us for the reality, the truth behind the faking, and that's one of the things that we expect art to do for us, to present the human condition in ways that don't falsify, that don't make it into some cheap, sugary version of itself, but actually present the truth, but present it in a way that enables us also to accept it. And I think that ideal
that sounds like
Schopenhauer is something that I'm sure all the people in this
art
room
presents
share.
the truth in a way that we
Why
can
would
accept.
one be a representational artist if it weren't because one wants to show the world as it really is, and in doing so give people the kind of consolation that comes to them through knowing the truth. And I think this idea that art should guide us in this way to the deep truth of things is something which I think we need to defend and is under attack in the world in which we live. I'm going to put on the screen various slides with thoughts on them. I know that as visual artists you're probably hostile to the written word, aren't you? And especially when it contains abstract thoughts. But there won't be too many of these, but it's just so that you have something to look at while I try to explain my meaning. And I think the first thing that I would like to impress on you is that there is a difference between lying and faking. Someone who tells a lie deceives his victim, that's the whole point of it. But a fake is someone who deceives himself. He's somebody who isn't just telling lies about what he is to others, but he's also creating for himself an unreal personality which will be sufficient to take himself in. And when people fake things, they sometimes do it together as a kind of complicit deception, which we see frequently in the modern world, not least, as I'm sure you realise, in the art schools. You know, that if you look at the shows of people like Damien Hirst and Tracy Emin, who are at the art establishment in London, you will always see that they are surrounded by people who are busily confirming them in their completely self-deceived opinion of themselves. And this is mutual. The critics themselves are flattered by the artists into believing of themselves that they have the ability to see the real aesthetic meaning of things. So there's a kind of almost a ballet of complicit deception. And it's not just beliefs that can be faked, as when I tell a lie or pretend to believe something and then deceive myself into believing it. We can fake our emotions, and that happens all the time. Sometimes, our good manners require us to pretend to emotions that we don't have. Obviously, somebody who, at a funeral, actually said what he really thought about the dear but departed would not be welcome. So most of us in those circumstances have to be prepared to deceive, not to deceive, but just to pretend. But there's a kind of pretense in emotion where we take ourselves in and think while pretending to feel something that we really do feel it. And that's the sort of the thought that that we are familiar with from sentimentality in the arts. And people make fake claims to eminence. People believe themselves to be the geniuses that others will think them to be, provided they believe it. So faking is a kind of achievement. Lying is not. Anybody can tell lies. It's sufficient to have a certain intention. You know, I just intend to say what is untrue in the hope of deceiving you. But faking is an achievement. That's something where I actually change the way things are. I change my own nature into something which takes me in and also takes you in too. So faking has always got a kind of success to it. And that brings me to the topic of kitsch. Many people in this room I know have thought about this, and Odd, of course, has written some very interesting and profound things about just what kitsch really is in the world in which we live. And I suspect that I'm talking about perhaps a pre-Nerdrum concept of kitsch in what I go on to say.
Pre-Nerdrum, so he knows he's going to be talking about the other guy. When the concept was first
introduced in the early 20th century, it was always a term of abuse. You know, something to call a work of art kitsch, or anything kitsch, is to suggest that in some way it belongs in the world of fakes, the world of fake emotions. And fake emotions appeal to us because they're less demanding than real ones. You know, real love is a problem, as you all know. But fake love has a lot of benefits attached to it with very few costs. So in that area, kitsch has a kind of purchase on things. But there's a sort of mystery to kitsch. You know, when did it begin? It seems odd. If it did.
So he goes into the history of it too and stuff. So that's pretty good. He's pretty good stuff. I like him, and I'm not sure that I've ever heard him say anything I didn't agree with. So that's kind of impressive for me, because as you ask, is philosophy all just a matter of disagreeing with somebody? And by the way, recursion is a property of our language, which might even be relatively unique or completely unique to human languages, because it's not clear that like dogs use it. I'm not sure whales, they might, right? But recursion, you know what recursion is? Yes? Yes? If you look it up on Google, notice what it first comes up and asks, did you mean recursion? We'll keep doing that until you get the point. Recursion is it happening again, you know, so that's funny. It's a joke. Recursion. Do you mean recursion?
It's pretty fun.
Noam Chomsky, by the way, is the linguist that I think is the one that kind of brought this whole business of recursion up and identified it as specific to humans, that I can say something to you and then I can say, I can say something to you. In fact, I just said that I could say something to you, right? So that's recursion. You know, and just the other day I saw an article where it said something about the young child, when they realize that language is recursive, has reached like a significant point in their development where they realize that not only do thoughts create words, but words can create thoughts, you know, in their own minds and so on. So it's pretty interesting that the recursion is kind of one of those catchphrases or words that's in a meme that's in our language now. But that's part of what happens with philosophy. When, you know, someone says, you know, there are no truths. Are you sure? Right? You know, oh, and then you're right, you're wrong, right? You know, this statement, you know, uttered, you know, number A is false. You know, oh, well, is that true? Well, if it's true, then it's false. But if it's false, then it's true, right? Right? You get the, so you're in that circular kind of problem, right? So philosophy loves that kind of stuff. Socrates, they killed him for it, right? That was the main reason he was such an asshole, was because he kept using recursion on people until they decided to kill him, right? Yeah. Did they do that to Jesus too? Did Jesus do the same thing? His parables never made sense. You know, they always left people wondering what the heck, what did he mean by that, you know, which might be the same kind of thing. Okay. So let's move on, though, to where we have to go to keep up. So the second portion tonight is the article, A Defense of Abortion. And this is a really famous article. And in fact, it was pretty significant. I think, as I mentioned, some of you were here, I think, when I said that Judith Thompson wrote this in 1971. And if not only if you've been following the Vietnam sequence on PBS, that's actually, I guess, what is it, Sunday night? I guess they'll be doing 71. I don't know what the last one I saw was 65, and then I couldn't watch it last night because I was at I'm going to be a mentor again this year, and I had to go to the information night. So this is in the middle of the protests and things. Heck, I was married in 72.
I was born in 71.
And the draft ended in 75? I want to say 75. And as of this point in the Vietnam, the Ken Burns series that is playing, everybody's talking about it, at least in my conversational group. Believe it or not, I have a World War II medal. But I wasn't born until 1951. So you might say, well, how did you get a World War II medal? Well, if I was stationed in Berlin, and at the time I was there, after you were there for 3 months, you earned the Army of Occupation Medal, which is a World War II medal because Berlin never surrendered. So I'm actually a veteran of World War II. That's just crazy. But I'll never stand up in like the theater. All the members of World War II stand up, and you see these old guys. You know? I'm not going to stand up with these folks because that would just.
You know they're not looking for you to start your sentence with the term technically.
Well, you know, you're born in 1951. You know, one of my friends, Steve Haycox, was talking Wednesday night. He said, "You realize I have the medal from Vietnam, and yet I was at all these protests again." You know, so that he thought that was kind of unique. That on the one hand, he's got a Vietnam service medal, but he's, oh well. Okay, so this is 1971, and it's famous because she comes up with the weirdest metaphor or allegory, you know, right? You know, so this is the violinist. You wake up and you discover that during the night, all of a sudden, somehow, a famous violinist has been plugged into you and is totally dependent on you for their life, so that if you cut them off, literally, they will die. And it's a famous violinist, right? And so you're going to have to stay plugged into this violinist for 9 months. Okay, what is she comparing this to?
Being pregnant.
Being pregnant, right? By the way, I have never been pregnant. I know it might look it, you know, occasionally. As far as I know, there's only 2 males that have ever been pregnant. The one was Arnold, right, in the movie, right? That's not a tumor, right?
Kindergarten
I love that
Cop,
movie.
but the movie was Junior.
Junior.
Yeah, and then the other one, I have trouble with, because the guy was actually a girl. Well, right? He had been changed to be a guy. And boy, was he an ugly guy. Did you ever see? Right? But he was already pregnant somehow.
He's born with both parts. Impregnated himself.
Did he? I don't want to go. Let's. Well. There's an issue there. More than. Okay. So this is a usually feminine issue, getting pregnant for humans. And even the children I do have, remember, we adopted them, so we didn't even make them ourselves. They were handed to us, already complete, generally speaking, But so, the issue she's facing at the time, have you read it? Do you feel like taking away the conversation here? What she's, because this is the argument that the fetus is a person, and there's no point where you could say the fetus wasn't a person. Actually, for Thomas Aquinas, so remember the Catholic Church was actually Thomas, following Thomas Aquinas. He argued that the fetus is ensouled when it starts to move, so roughly 3 months. Because by Aquinas' definition, the soul was the activity of the body, and so if there's no activity, there's no soul either. So at one point, abortion was actually okay, for the church. But as science developed and came to conclude that the fetus is a whole genetic person, then the church basically said, no, okay, so no abortion, period. In fact, they're even hostile to preventing childbirth. Why is that? Why does the church take that tact? Does anybody know?
Why does the Catholic Church, or why does the church?
Why does I think of the church as the Catholic Church and the Protestant sects as sectarian. So I realize that some refer to them as the church, and that's true, but
I don't know why they took that disposition, but I do know that there used to be, within the Catholic Church, a group of priests and nuns that privately got together and would, in the states that it was illegal, would take the females across the border, pay for the abortion, bring them back, take care of them. And there was it was like this whole network of underground doctors, priests, and nuns that would do that for women that felt that they really needed to do that. So not necessarily the entire church felt that way.
Well, the official dogma, and so they were doing it against the rules of their own orders.
Corruption.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. And that's all. There's always been that.
But the idea of their doctrine
Is officially against
against
abortion, and my understanding of
birth
it
control as well.
would, yes, because what it represents is a disrespect for life. So the principle that's behind this is really powerful, and I think very good. That we should show we respect life, that we love life, right?
Because you're interfering with God's will. And so,
That life is beautiful, that life is good. If remember my summary of Augustine's point, which is 450 A.D., right? Is that God's message really is that love is and you think, well, did the Jewish religion profess love? I'm confused about that. I think that there's a good possibility that where they do say that love is the relationship that God has for us, might have been influenced by the Christian. So a lot of Jewish theology kind of reacted to Christianity. I'm not sure that love is a part of Islam, especially. But Christianity, the idea is that Jesus is everything will appear good to you. There will be no evil in the world if you realize that everything is love. Right. So that's the message, right? And so their interpretation then is that abortion is demonstrating a hostility to life, right? But sure, that does cause conflicts. It's, and part of that, of course, is when the life of the mother is at risk, and so on. But here, what she's concerned about is the argument that the fetus is a person, a child, right from the beginning. And she agrees. She agrees that science shows us that this person is essentially there, basically, I guess, from the blastocyst on, right? And the DNA is there. It's a unique person. Granted, the DNA is going to be, as you're going through gestation, the interaction with the mother. We're never going to be able to grow these in test tubes. That doesn't make sense unless you can create a false womb of some sort, because the biochemical relationship between the mother, and in fact between her and her environment, so there are stresses on her that are going to change her biochemistry that then have an impact on the fetus, right? So some interesting arguments that kind of stress because of population. Stresses of overpopulation trigger the fetus to become a homosexual, because literally then that child will have less opportunity to create more children. So in a sense, it's kind of a biochemical way of trying to cut back on the population. There's so many other things associated with this. In the last class, one of the things that came up was the pill, right? Talking about the pill, using the pill to prevent abortion. What you're, in a sense, doing is using, I don't know if they've created pills now with so as far as I know, the pills primarily use pregnant mare urine. Is that right? Anyone know? They changed it. It's still. I know they were trying to come up with synthetic hormone, but as far as I know, the horse farms, they've moved to Canada because of the protests in the United States. But so the horse farms, where they keep the horses pregnant, so that the urine is especially, and they don't give them much water, so that they're getting the urine as strong as possible, so they can get as much of the hormone as possible out of it. But of course, the reason for the protests in the United States is because as soon as they have the foals, they kill the foals so that they can re-impregnate the mares, right? So a lot of PETA folks and others were totally hostile to the farms in the United States. And so they're all in Canada as far as I know. But here's the issue. If you're using pregnant mare urine to gather your hormones that then you're taking in the pills, what your bodies are doing is faking a pregnancy. And this started roughly in the 50s, that they started the pills, right? Is that right? I mean,
What does the pill do?
Yeah. It tricks your body into thinking it's pregnant.
So then you can't get
So
pregnant
then you
because
can't
your
get
body
pregnant.
thinks it's already pregnant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that worked really well, except although, statistically what we discover is that as more and more people started taking the pill, marriages started to decline. And there was even like some kind of a dialectical relationship between the rise of the one and the decline of the other.
And there could have been other contributions to that besides
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You could
yeah.
argue all day long. Right.
Right. I'm taking this mostly from The Decline of Males. Did I mention that book already?
No.
The Decline of Males. It's Lionel Tiger. Can you imagine naming your child Lionel Tiger? Is it The Decline of Males? That's actually, why am I? So this is just one aspect of the book, actually. But what they discovered is that we have pheromones. We communicate with pheromones. They didn't know that when they were developing the pill. But females basically spread their pheromones in the air, and it attracts the males. Males, you have to actually touch the bodies in order to get the pheromones from the males. By the way, my second quiz question tonight, the first one was, what do you think is the most beautiful art? The second quiz question I have for you is, do you think it should be legal for them to sell pheromones in colognes and perfumes? Well, they do. They're expensive, but should that be legal? But so, what happens when a person is on the pill is that the pheromones secreted from the body tell the husband that the wife is pregnant. But more than that, it appears that it even points out to the husband that your wife is pregnant with a horse. So, sorry about this. This isn't my fault.
She's been unfaithful.
I'm just the messenger, right?
Unfaithful
So,
horse.
so
That's too good.
So when a woman is pregnant, the husband biologically changes along with the wife. So it's not just the wife that's changing biochemically to grow the fetus, but the husband smells the pheromones, knows that this is his child, and adapts biochemically also, and becomes more protective of her. Loves her more, right? So if we think of, it's not just some sort of romantic love that's all, cerebral, but if there's actual biochemical stuff involved in our interrelationships and why we're attracted to one another, pheromones are clearly part of this picture. And, I think a lot of people, again, we could argue whether is it that or is it, other things. But I think it's pretty obvious that the pheromones definitely have something to do with it, even though we didn't know about it. And so essentially what the pills are doing are creating a problem for us, but it was subliminal. We didn't realize it because we didn't realize that our biochemistry has been changed, and the relationship is going to be damaged subtly without you knowing. You don't go around and say, "Oh, my wife is pregnant with a horse." No, that's not the way. But subliminally, the bond between the pair is disrupted because of this.
And when you say creating a problem for us, are you implying that it's creating a problem for us that we can't constantly be having children?
Well, there's the other problem, right,
There's
so.
a lot of problems involved with women constantly producing child after child after child too. There's a lot of problems with that. It can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that was the positive side of this, is that women could have control of their bodies.
Women
and
lived maybe to 20 to 30 years old.
oh my goodness.
They were lucky.
And you're not having, 2 children, or a child every 2 years, or
Right.
that would be the optimal at the most, right? Would be every 2 years. I mean, you read just, the biographies of people just years before all of this, and they were typical families having 20 children, and we still do. We still
Right.
do. I think of
Yes.
the the Pilgrim family, if you're familiar with them, a
Right.
few years ago here in Alaska, they had, I think, 20 children.
Something like that.
I bought a dog from them. We
Wow.
went down to Soldotna and bought a
Were they at McGrath
great-
or McCarthy? I don't remember. Was it McGrath or McCarthy they were living in?
it was in the park, because they plowed
Right.
the road through the
Right,
park.
right, yeah.
When I bought the dog from them, they were in Soldotna,
Oh, okay.
renting a farm
Did he
there.
actually
That was
die
before.
while he was incarcerated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he's dead now. We used to send the kids boxes of like
Wow.
books and stuff, and we didn't realize it, but they wouldn't give them to the kids because they were,
You're right.
you know. Yeah. So no, I realize there's this. Also, the pill was considered a liberating phenomenon for the women because now
That's
you
much
have
freedom.
control over your
I
body.
don't know if we do
The flip side that Lionel Tiger points out is it actually gave males liberation too, because, and one of his statistics, he argues that roughly 52% of all marriages prior to the pill were shotgun weddings, where they had discovered they were pregnant and decided they better get married, and the male felt obligated, so they married. But after the pill, the male had a liberating sense too, that it's not my fault. Why didn't she take care of it? So there was a change in the feeling of obligation, that it's my child and I should support the child. So this is all interesting stuff. And just, oh my goodness, the development of the fetus and all the things that are biochemically interacting between the fetus and its environment is absolutely fascinating. But so she does agree that the fetus, now this is before all of that development, right? Because that was what, 98, I think, where they started really realizing the importance of pheromones. And so like today you could buy pheromones. For men. See, the advantage for men is that normally the pheromones of males don't spread out into the air. So males are attracted to females, but it doesn't work the opposite way, right? It also explains one of the phenomena associated with going to college. A lot of women, when they first go to college at the beginning of the semester, they all go into the dorm, right? Their periods are all at different times of the month, but after they've been together, living together for a while, they end up all hitting at the same time. And evolutionary psychologists have argued, wow, that might be because in a tribal environment where all the women are together, that's designed to keep all of them from being pregnant at once. Because the alpha males can't impregnate all of them at the same time. So you end up with only some pregnant as a group. Because if they were all pregnant at once, that would be probably a disaster for a nomadic tribe. Right? Kind of interesting. There's folks that absolutely critique all that stuff because of lots of reasons. So cologne for men, this is made so that it can go into the air, and they've tested it so that people wearing the cologne, even though they're ugly and have nothing going for them, you've got a stud, an Adonis sitting here, on the women. I don't know why, but I like that guy more, So this is an interesting. All right. And I don't know if you want to take the same thing and talk about makeup for women and so on. In my class on Thursday, I asked, well, why do women wear, the makeup in the places where they do? Any answers?
Enhancing?
Yes, absolutely.
Keeping the eyes up.
A lot of it is to simulate estrus, from what I understand.
Well, if they have it in where all the blood flow increases in arousal, it makes it look like the woman is pre-orgasmic, basically. So you see a woman that's decorated that way, and you feel like, whoa, I'm almost there already. You know,
Oh, my goodness.
it's not right.
That is not why I put makeup on in the morning.
That is over the
Wait,
top.
maybe I'm not understanding the English very well, but I'm like just so curious. Like, what are you saying?
Say that again.
I just didn't understand like the words.
From a male's point of view.
But this isn't.
But
I'm not making
no,
this
no,
up.
no,
This
no,
is.
I'm not suggesting you're making it up.
Oh, from the male's point of view,
I'm just saying
the
that
woman looks like not
theoretically,
only is she attracted to me,
that's
she's
the last thing that
she's
females thinking about, maybe not unbeknownst to her.
and high heels. Why do we wear high heels? We. I shouldn't say we.
We're learning more.
But really though, why?
Well, it changes the configuration of your posture.
No, I meant
Why?
what did you mean with the makeup thing? I really want to get what you said.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. It makes you look like you are highly stimulated
Oh.
already.
Oh. Cool. Okay,
Even before
I'll
you
move
met me, whoa, wow.
on. Cool.
Or, it's not my fault. It works. It
No,
works.
no, I just wanted to understand.
Obviously, it works, right? I mean, Cleopatra used this stuff, right? Right. So it's ancient, right?
Like way before that.
But if you think about where they put it where the blood flow would be most obvious, and it basically imitates increased blood flow, which happens in arousal. Is that English enough, or?
That was English enough. I'm with it. Yeah.
And high heels are, now, since I've learned this, and I see a businesswoman walk by in a nice business suit and high heels, I'm like, and then she complains about equality and everything else, and you're wearing high heels, which do the same thing basically as the makeup. So it's hard to watch.
Simulates the
Actually,
posture of presenting.
what posture of yes? Is that what it's called?
I'm being as diplomatic as I can.
That was terrific, actually, because I've never quite had a good way of saying what the high heels do. But the posture of presenting.
Yes.
So are you suggesting women should think about what they dress and wear before? Or they think about how many people am I going to arouse today, and should I try to avoid that because this is my purpose today, to avoid
Should I
arousing
even
them?
bring this up in class?
Or
This
should
could
they
be
just-
my career right here, Well, what this teaches me, though, is that this stuff,
Because there's a
we
confidence
use
that
it.
builds, too.
We
There's a
use it.
confidence thing, too.
I mean, males that dress, the loud truck with the music, that's the peacock, the feathers.
It can be for certain
You know?
people, but not for the general
Right,
population. I mean, I guarantee you, most women approach that as,
Tied
oh,
in
gosh.
there.
It's
that's
it's
definitely-
subliminal. It's
'Cause,
not
I mean,
conscious.
when you-
It's only a certain
Well, that's the
population.
thing. In college, you're supposed to learn the stuff that affects your life, and then you can make your own use of it or not,
However, it's
right?
not always about.
But the thing is, otherwise you're being manipulated by those that know what they're doing and what they're selling you. I'm looking at the ads, like in the New York Times Magazine, and all the women are like, they're pouty and all this stuff, and you think, we live in a hyper-sexual media environment.
That is correct. I agree with you there.
It's just an incredibly, and it's, what's the, I'm sure you've all seen this, right? Dove Evolution. right? You've seen this? Everybody seen it? No. Yes? Yes?
The makeup in the Photoshop.
Yes. Beautiful woman, perfectly fine, but then they do everything they can to make her. And then right around here, now it becomes Photoshop. Notice he'll come in and he's going to change her features.
Eyes bigger.
Plus the billboard's in a nice neighborhood, by the way. I don't know how nice it is, but gated community, I guess. So this was part of a campaign about preparing young people to recognize that, like all the magazines and the movie stars, the people that you see in the media, those are not real,
Right.
right?
Like
And so if your
Kardashian's butt.
your self-image is being
let that
totally
affect yourself.
destroyed
Yeah.
by thinking, oh, I can't possibly look like that. Well, no one can, right? So that's fake. As Roger Scruton was talking about. Sorry, but where's the? I think this is. No, I don't want that. This is the one. I love this one. Have you seen this one too? No, this is a satire on the first one.
Yeah, because using the same music and everything.
Slav evolution. Love especially the one at the one point a fist hits him in the.
It's getting fatter and
Now Photoshop.
It's making it even worse. You're in the neck.
Wow.
I just always show the two of them.
Oh my gosh.
So
It's true though.
no, so I think it's interesting that we have the science that tells us what all this stuff does. I'm convinced though most people are, I wasn't familiar with most of it until it's relatively recent. A lot of this is coming out. But we need to be, I think we need to be aware of it. If we're attracted to these kinds of things, and then the question is, well, but why? And what does that do to our relationships, with other people and so on? But Judith Thompson has succeeded, and if you think 2 years after this, Roe v. Wade was decided by the Justice of the Supreme Court, right? Her issue is that the fetus being a person is not the main issue. The issue should be the woman and being her body, right? Do I need to allow this violinist to stay plugged into me for 9 months so that I have to stay in bed in order to save the life of this person? And where's the obligation that I've made to this person, right? So that's the strength of her argument here, is in turning the whole argument around and thinking about the woman's position. I had a couple things underlined. So page 43, grant that the fetus is a person from the moment of conception. how does the argument go from there? Right? Is it morally incumbent on you to accede to this situation? No doubt it would be very nice if you did, a great kindness, but do you have to accede to it? Later she says, I imagine you would regard this as outrageous, which suggests that something really is wrong with that plausible sounding argument I mentioned a moment ago. Baby equals violinist, right? That some have less of a right to life than others. Is that the case? Some have less of a right to life than others. And what kind of right is it to have a right to life? A very interesting point here, and she follows this too. I don't know where it started. Roger Scruton uses the same argument, talking about the nature of rights. That traditionally, the conservative view of rights were viewed in a negative sense. So for example, you have the right to retain your property. The government can't take your property unless they have certain reasons that are considered socially legitimate for taking it, or for taking your life, or for not respecting your privacy, and so on. So the rights traditionally were negative rights, where things have gone since roughly FDR, social legislation have given people rights that represent actually a claim on society, as opposed to a negative right that you can't take my property, and instead says you owe me health care, for example, right? You know, so that's a claim on society, not a right, as the conservatives would say, but instead that we've got a claim on society. And how did that happen? Well, it happens in the social contract. We vote on this, you know, through the development of law and everything. We end up with society saying that you have a claim on society, that if you're mentally ill, we should take care of you, and so on, right? So these are claims. And of course, that in this case is in the context of the claim that we say that the fetus had. So so it becomes a social claim. As a matter of fact, throughout the world, and I believe even still today, most countries actually allow women to kill their children if they want to.
Most countries do.
You know, I remember reading, you know, in one community that when the mother's about ready to give birth, she goes out into the woods with friends who use tools to make a hole. She gives birth over the hole, and the friends help by helping the baby with sticks, and then the mother decides whether she wants to keep the baby or not. And so if she wants it, then they give it to her. But if she decides she doesn't want it, then since none of them have touched it, they drop it into the hole and they bury it. And it's really a fascinating book that I read years ago. Oh gosh, who are the authors? Homicide. Let me see. Evolutionary Peace. Yeah, Daly and Wilson. And this book is fascinating. They say that most women that kill their children kill infants. Most males that kill their children kill teenage sons. And the sons, and the argument is they might not actually be their biological sons. I mean, you know, you trust that it is your son, but there might be biochemical reasons for you not to actually have an attachment for the son. And so once the son reaches the age where it begins to compete with you, you might not love the son, so you might end up killing the son in male-to-male competition, basically. So stepsons, for example. But it's not a real big, I mean, you know, it's not like most stepfathers will kill their teenage sons? No, that's not an issue. But when you look at the statistics, there's an amazing difference there, that stepsons that are teenagers tend to be more often killed by their non-biological fathers, their legal fathers, whatever. So this is kind of interesting, but you know, if you think, wow, what happened to our culture, where all of a sudden the value of every life became so significant that we use that as a measure of how modern your society is. You know, that you know your child's expectancy of life.
And we're pretty picky with how we do, with what we choose to look at, the value of life, and other things that we will look past the value of life after, for example, children are born and they are in poverty, things such as that. How we will look past that, because that's just the parent's responsibility. However, when it comes to the baby before it's born, everybody's all, oh, we need to preserve that, however.
It's also interesting that as our culture has kind of changed, and Pope John Paul II, he loves you. He's dead now, but you know what I mean. He that was his, right. He always said that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living in the United States in a culture of death. And the reason for it is, I actually blame Descartes and the cogito ergo sum. That's in a book called, I think, Memory. Memory and Identity. So I didn't learn that because I had a conversation with him. I read the book, right? And he basically blames this problem in the modern West with Descartes and the social construction, the idea that our social contract is based on we the people, I have rights, and that leads us to a sense that I want to enjoy my life, right? And so having children, the children compete with me for my resources. So children become expensive. We worry about, you know, how much is it going to cost them to go to college and this, that, and the other. But what kind of life do I want? You know, I'm amazed with like the retirement thing right now, where all the, you know, the people that are trying to retire, and how can they keep their wealth from the children getting it, you know, so that they can use it to have a good life. And I'm thinking, well, you know, what if you want to make sure your children have a good life, and that's what you're going to aim at doing? Well, here's this culture that says you don't want the children because you don't want to have to pay for their life. You want to have the money for your life. So that we're more encouraged to have fewer children or none, right? You know, so if you think about this culture of death, that's part of what John Paul II was talking about. And I guess I better quit. Questions, though? You guys have? Yes, I do have a test that you should do before next week. Do you see that there? So the first exam is given. Here's the first one. Please email it before next class if you can. Just pick 3.
Where's the list of philosophers you had? You showed me. And is Noam Chomsky an option?
I believe so.
Okay, well,
Let me go up. So if you click on term project, you can do Noam.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure I have him in there somewhere.
Term projects, you said.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the list. If I don't have Noam in there, boy, I should.
Well,
That's pretty. It's obviously not a complete list at all.
okay. Right.
I don't see him. Whew, that's bad. He's significant. I don't agree with his politics at all. But that's.
That's beside the point.
Yeah, that's you still have to read him. Still have to read that point of view. But Roger Scruton is closer to my sense of that, and Slavoj Žižek, and of course I'm always waiting for the better argument. So I'm confused about the whole, where the values are. It seems clear to me that the Earth is overpopulated, and hence we have global warming. I believe that's a real thing, from our human footprint, carbon and so on. And when I was born in 1951, there was maybe a billion, maybe a little more than a billion people estimated. Now there's roughly 8 billion people in one lifetime. And that's kind of amazing, and when you think, wow, where is this population? It's not in the modern societies, the first so-called first world societies, because they actually have a population decline. Where is it? It's all the third world countries really. It's declining perhaps in a lot of those, and the argument is as they become more educated, especially as the women become more educated, the amount of children that have declines. But an awful lot of what our liberal interests have been is to help the people in the third world countries. And you keep seeing people in camps that are basically thriving primarily because the West is feeding them. You think, and we're actually increasing the population in these camps in an environment where they cannot thrive on their own. And you think, how dumb is that?
However, you can talk about Western's Christian philosophy, and there's where your faith comes in.
Absolutely.
So there's where your faith comes in.
So
It's
this
not
is
for you to decide the outcome.
this is heart-wrenching. On the one hand, you feel like, well, we should love all of life. We should, and especially
because you
human
don't know
life.
the outcome, and you're interfering with God's plan. And Jesus said, keep feeding those poor people and don't question.
And yet, look what's happening. And global warming is creating a hellhole in the Middle East and in the areas where all these wars are breaking out. They're basically fighting over resources, and the same thing in places in Africa. We're seeing islands disappear. Myanmar, where the Rohingya are fleeing, and even Suu Kyi, I think I'm saying her name right, won Nobel Prize because of how powerful a woman she has been. She's on the side of the people that are attacking these Rohingya. I'm looking at the things she says for subtle indications like, hey guys, I'm doing the best I can. It's the army that's doing this, and you can't really stop them. We've only been here 18 months, right? So I'm reading that, but at the same time, you go on, the websites and you look at the people that are fleeing and everything, and they're Muslim, and it's a Buddhist country, and they're impoverished, and they did actually attack a couple, so who knows? How does this go? But it's fighting over resources, so when you get right down to it, it's Thomas Malthus. Remember him?
No.
Thomas Malthus.
Would you say you disagree with everything about Noam Chomsky, or he's just too liberal-minded?
Oh, his linguistics.
Because I like it.
Oh, well, my problem is I'm too dumb to understand him, I guess, most of the time. Because it seems to me like a lot of his arguments against the status quo, I all my life voted for the status quo. Status quo has been good to me, right? I'm not one of the impoverished folks. And so when he is critical of that and feels, those liberal critiques that I think that's unfair of him to feel that way. And when you look at history, I know history is an interpretive skill, and his interpretation of what's going on is always on the side of those with the least. And you look at the various historians you could pick that are looking at it from, America's great manifest destiny, all these crazy things. You think, well, I grew up with all of that. I have attachment to a lot of that. I really do think that our society is the best society in the world. I really do think that there's
So-
progress. And,
So in the idea of ethnocentrism, are you suggesting
oh,
that?
I realize I'm ethnocentric,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
But at the same time, if my argument is, but here's our science,
I hope
right?
not
Our
keeping
science
you-
is
Am I
our
keeping
science
you?
is going this way, right? You know, here's microwaves,
Okay,
frozen foods, you know, Swanson dinner, you know,
Mhm.
et cetera.
Right,
You know,
right.
so this represents progress. And it also means we're
Right.
destroying the environment.
right,
So that's another gut-wrenching-
Right, capitalization to the
Absolutely,
max, to
yeah.
the max, to
No,
the max.
if we wanna do the best thing for the environment, we should do less. Basically leave Alaska,
Right.
because living here is the worst thing we could possibly do because of how much energy we're using to live here. Grapes
Right.
from Chile,
But-
you know.
But it varies so much about quality of life and people's lives versus, there's countries that view our materialism and the way we live, and we're I, me, that's nothing they would want anything to do with. I could
Well,
learn
Islam,
something.
Islam considers us the great Satan.
Well, exactly,
And
but
for
I
all
can
of those
go, say, to
reasons.
Mexico and assume, because of my ego or Western ways, that I'm bringing something to them. However, I'm probably gonna get a lot more out of what I'm experiencing there because of their simple life, and they're a lot happier than I will ever be. If I am extremely materialistic
Yeah.
and I need,
Culture of death.
right, but
What John Paul II said, that,
Right.
whoa, yeah,
they're
that's absolutely
poor.
true.
Yeah, they're eating beans and rice every day. However, their quality of life is pretty, generally, you can say a lot of other civilizations have that. If you're basing it
Well,
on.
as
Wouldn't it
long
just
as they're not-
depend on what an individual's feelings of what their quality is, like what bar they would choose to meet? I mean, cause you could have somebody in the middle of the rice paddies picking rice happy as can be, and then right next to him, the very same person that wants to be a doctor, not a rice paddy.
Yeah.
But here, you could have somebody poor living off the streets, happy as can be, and the richest person in the world, miserable. And it just kind of depend on what your version of what your
Well, I
quality
think
would
there's a
be.
lot of value in finding, observing someone else's reality other than your own.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
experiencing.
Novels are supposed to.
Exactly, and that's why I
Steven
will
Pinker, the
dive
better
into
angels
a
of our
book
nature.
constantly because it gives you a different perspective and it gives you some sort of respect and not only thinking about, oh, it's not only about me, it's not only, America really isn't probably, the best place to be, but I grew up in a really multicultural place, so I really
Where?
benefited.
Where?
In Reno, Nevada, I went to
Uh-huh,
school there,
uh-huh.
and we had people from every which way in my high school, and I really benefited from so much of that, going over at my friend's house.
Well,
But,
and two,
I know cultures
the
and stuff.
U.S., and not just the U.S., but I know it's problematic in Europe, but the idea of our multiculturalism, our openness,
Right.
our society's beliefs are founded on the idea of being open-minded to other tools, other
Right.
ways of viewing things. But there
But
are
that's
societies.
shifting now.
Well, that might be because educators are not doing a very good job. I feel that I'm guilty for a lot of that.
Mhm.
Because I feel like I should be making sure that students are understanding that modern point of view. But, I mean, if you go and you look at, say, Saudi Arabia, they have the engineers and things, but they would not allow you to practice your religion there unless it's
Exactly.
Wahhabism, right?
Right.
Even other versions of Islam
Right.
are illegal there,
Right.
right?
Right. Would I have had the same experiences with all these people from these other cultures if I was actually living in their country? Probably not.
Oh,
But
you
because
wouldn't-
they were in America,
You wouldn't be allowed to be
we
here
were
this evening
allowed.
without your
Exactly.
husband.
Exactly.
And I should be looking at him when I'm talking to you.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
there's, to me, our society has learned, and it's a philosophical development, that we've
Right.
learned that we are better off by allowing people to speak their mind and learning from them, but at the same time, there's a better answer. and being open-minded and democratic and so on is a better answer, right?
Right.
So I look at the United States as, well, maybe France. I've never been to France, but everything I read about France and so on, not everything, but I mean, France looks really socially the most progressive. Interesting, intricate differences and so on. Puzzling and trying to figure out just the nuances of differences in belief, because they're actually stricter, like you can't wear a burqa on the beach, for example, right?
Right.
Their society says, yes, you have to be open, but you have to be French.
But you can't, oh, okay.
You have to
You
become.
can't be oppressive.
It's illegal for you to come in and not become a modern person.
Right, right.
Whereas we don't force it,
Right.
In fact, it turns out that, wow, if you're a modern person, you could capitalize on the
Right.
idiots that aren't.
And is the
So-
idea of coming to America when you're of that faith is to change a little bit? You know, isn't the idea
Well-
is not to keep in the same reality you just escaped from?
Well, there's a lot of
I don't know
folks
that
that will
you'd
say
be
that,
able to live here if you didn't, though.
well, the
do you mean?
fathers kill their daughters because they start becoming American.
Right.
Right, but I'm just
Even in
saying,
Canada.
the
Things
idea
that they
though,
do over there, as far as their culture and their religion go, they
Right.
are illegal here. Not all of them, some of
no,
them.
right.
So you would have to change some of the things that you do when you
Right.
get
And you would
here.
think that you would want that, because what are you running away from then if you didn't want that? Why aren't you
Precisely.
just staying in your
Well,
reality then?
kind of the interesting idea is that they're running away because literally the environment's destroyed. And
Right.
There's no place to live.
Right,
So they want to get away, so they come here. But they want to stay in the culture
right,
that they came from. And what they don't realize is that's the culture that destroys
Destroyed
that
you.
environment.
exactly,
So that, they
Exactly.
can't become
exactly,
members here unless they become like
Right.
the culture here, and they resist it.
Right.
And if they have the opportunity to live in a community that's all the same, which even we are doing here in Anchorage, right? So that they don't have to learn English, they can stay in a community that all speaks their language, right? Then they're not going to acclimate to our culture, they're not going to become
Right.
Americans, and then they're going to feel slighted because they're not getting the benefits that Americans have, and then they'll be hostile, especially the young males, right?
right.
So they're the ones that become the terrorists and do the violent things. But so there is a best culture for the moment. I mean, it's not like, we can't grow too,
Well,
but,
we
you know,
produce a
if-
lot of
if you get
extreme
this-
terrorists too in our own culture as well,
oh,
you know, that's
well,
another argument, it's another discussion.
well, now the thing is, like, you mean like Waco?
Like, most of the terror that goes on in America is not.
Like the guy that, the new book out, is Blood of Blood of Patriots.
There you go, yeah, that's a great example.
Right?
Great
Yeah,
example.
So, I can't think of his name. Alex? No, whatever the young man is that was threatening to kill the judge because they were going to tax him and stuff. And he said, no, I'm an independent, I don't really live in the United States. I'm my own
those
sovereign.
people,
Right.
yes.
Sovereign,
Yeah.
Sovereign
sovereign.
citizens.
Yes.
They're just wrong.
right,
So it's not that our culture has produced that
no,
that's not
I
a
agree with
success
you.
story, right?
Right.
So on the other hand, the ones that I think of as success stories are phenomenal young people
Right.
that are going to do great things.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that I think have learned our culture and the values well.
embrace
whereas-
them,
Right, whereas there are lots of folks that, for mental
Right.
reasons or
right,
environmental reasons, are totally missing the point of what I think is really ideal out there. And it's obviously a learned, to me, you have to go to college, you have to get that kind of an education. It's not, maybe some people can be autodidacts and learn a lot of this. There are some unique individuals that do that. but for the most part, individuals that teach themselves something are missing finer points of it, and that they need the ones that have been through the cultural training themselves. And, you know, it's not like you're born to this, it's instead the luck of the draw with regard to being plugged into the right environment and having the right teachers and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's me too. I'm in that, and you know, feel hopelessly inadequate, and yet at the same time recognize when I look around, well, who else? You know. You know.
Me. Speaking of which,
Oh, the last question.
the reading.
How can you tell a
See you
witch?
next week.
How can you tell a witch? I actually
She
have
weighs
not.
the same as a duck.
Well, see, I want to put that, but then you said that the grades are quantity.
Well,
So-
actually, with the email
Like the whole
response on
who
the
are you
quizzes, you could just
question?
say a duck.
Okay.
She weighs as a duck. But you could, but the,
Weighs
of
the
course,
same as the duck
you
made
know,
out of
was
wood.
it an interesting question? You know, I mean, we could. Are there real witches? No, not really. We don't believe that anymore. Well, on the other hand, there are
I
some
don't
people
know
that
that they're
think of themselves
witches,
as
but they're
witches.
spiritual people. But spiritual people aren't necessarily the same as witches. So, anyway, that could go for a whole nother discussion. I'm having trouble with this, and I think it's me, and it's
Well, it's not obviously just you.
well,
It's a difficult text.
I have a hard time with things that aren't solid. And if I were to
So
be
this is really good for you.
honest with you, it's a PTSD thing.
Ah.
And it's like I have to have control. Working on it, getting a heck of a lot better than I was 2 years ago.
This will
Or-
actually play to your advantage.
Well, and I was thinking so too. but
Because
then
what this,
I'm sitting down to read these books or these readings, and I'm just like, oh my God, I don't understand what this person is saying. I feel like they're just writing a whole bunch of words, and there's like nothing there. I don't understand. Can you tell me what I'm supposed to be looking for in these readings? Maybe? Or is it
you know,
just
what,
that?
what
Is it just
really,
somebody just
a
up
lot
and-
of good education really has, like the professor doing a close reading, right? Have you ever done that? A close reading is like where we read paragraph by paragraph and discuss what the paragraph means,
Oh,
step by step. In other words, try to figure, okay, so what is this plethora of words, especially with the thing in itself? You know, that's why I kind of went over
Yeah.
my little summary, right? You know, the thing in
I'm
itself,
still hung
that's,
up with the
that's
whole
the
weird thing
Kantian,
too.
that's the Kantian thing in itself that you can't see, right?
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about when he mentions the thing in itself. So he's assuming you're familiar with what he's talking about,
Oh,
right? Right?
okay.
But it's also clear to me that, well, if you haven't studied European philosophy, you don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
So here I am assigning you, granted it's short,
Yeah, no,
Right?
the length is not
so
an
I
issue.
know you're not going to get it, but then I'm going to try to give you enough so that you can make sense out of what he's doing, right?
Okay. So
But
stop
here-
stressing about understanding what I'm reading, just read it. And then when I get to class, it'll
There's
be
actually
clarified.
there's actually articles about how to read the role of logic. So
Okay.
if you look in the back of the text here, you've got in Appendix 1 the role of logic, right? So Appendix 1, right? And then you have a guide to writing philosophy papers. But now you don't have to follow this. Remember, I'm
Yeah.
just looking for volume. But if you want to get better at writing them, here's your guide, right?
I feel like I'm giving you elementary answers in my
And then remember, he's got a glossary.
quizzes, in my questions.
Well, each of us have
I'm
to
well
pick
above
up from
elementary,
where,
but
each of us have to pick up from where our individual experience has led us and go from there. And I'm sure reading this
I
stuff
bookmarked
is
it.
not going to hurt.
no,
And how it helps with the PTSD thing, right? And having control over it is when you realize that these arguments follow patterns
okay,
of this person says this person disagrees, and this person disagrees with him, and this person disagrees with him. And as a result of that, we get better.
okay,
So this is essentially society learning and developing through specific individuals, right? Society
Right.
doesn't learn as a group, society learns as individuals, each making incremental little better steps. And it doesn't just go better, it goes over this way, over this way, over this
it's
way,
like a
over
zigzag
this way.
pattern.
Right, right. Sometimes, famously, Lenin said, right,
Climbing a ladder,
Shag,
Because you gotta have
Vashaganazar.
one hand here, and then one hand here, and then one hand here, and then one hand here.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, I can do that,
Right?
yeah,
But so you're learning the pattern of how all these disputes work.
okay,
And that gives you the control over understanding the conflict. So when you hear the conflict, you're not enmeshed in that conflict. Instead, you're thinking, aha, so how does this place in the dialogue?
okay,
So you don't have to get upset with this guy,
right,
right? You're just stepping back from the argument and saying, oh, he's taking this point of view. So you're not in the football game.
okay.
You're up in the audience watching the two sides play by the rules.
An
this-
observer,
You're the observer, right?
okay,
Right? So it's not like this guy's trying to persuade you.
okay,
So Dallas Cowboys, okay, they got a touchdown. Now the
Okay.
Eagles get a touchdown. Yay for them, right? So you
Yeah.
can cheer for both sides. Although if you're on the Dallas side, you better not. Actually, if you're on the Eagles side, you better
you
not.
probably shouldn't
Probably
either.
shouldn't cheer.
Why don't you just go sit quietly with the hors d'oeuvres?
Yeah. But in, philosophy is pretty much the same way. And the more you read it, the more you realize it is. And the real
Just
and you're-
kind of this back
yeah.
and
So
forth.
so like as she's asking me really good questions, and I'm like, on the one hand, I can see why we love our fellow humans and we want to help them. On the other hand, this just feels really stupid because it's counterproductive, right?
Right.
Because now they're going to have 10 children and
Right.
demand 10 more tons of food because we've grown children in the desert.
Right.
And we don't want them to move. We don't want them to come here.
But
we
they're
want
going
them
to,
Well, yeah. Some of them are going to want to come here, and
because the
And-
camps are gonna become overpopulated.
You know what?
Yeah, I
And then
mean,
I'm gonna
yeah, you
have-
could talk about that for 3 days. Okay,
so So I'm totally torn in that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I could see how the arguments are playing football with one another,
right.
right? And so what
there's like
studying
not
philosophy.
exactly one right answer.
Oh, yeah, this is a game. Absolutely, that is the right. A right answer is that what we've got are, So which philosopher is going to win this year, but next year he's going to lose.
Okay,
And she's going to win and be the best philosopher for a year, and then this. So who gets the Super Bowl ring?
okay,
But at the same time, and football is not a bad allegory because football is significant for a lot of people. I mean,
Well, yeah.
a lot of people love
I
it.
lived in Norman for a while.
Oh, so
They like football.
so there's a value to the sport, not only in building character and team cohesion, community, all the things it does for us, right? But philosophy ends up also dovetailing into science and help giving guidance You know, so we keep
Like
coming
up with the hypothesis.
we come up with the pill.
Right.
Right.
That was crazy. I had no idea that it used to be made out of urine.
I think it still is. I don't know if they've gotten synthetic.
Horse urine.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I just pictured my husband's face. You know, the whole, she's pregnant, and pregnant with a horse. I have 4 kids. I know his face when I'm pregnant. Could you imagine if I told him I was having a horse? I just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it was great. I loved it.
But you know,
I don't get
the
offended.
pheromone. So I mean, they invented the pill and didn't know what side effects. Well, because they didn't even know about pheromones at the
Yeah.
time they invented the pill. But then they come up with pheromones and they discover, wow, that's really powerful stuff. Like with the great apes, you know, they do experiments with monkeys, and they think, well, but that's monkeys.
It would be an unfair
And I think,
fight
does
with
that affect-
pheromones, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because, well, on the other hand, so's makeup.
I never thought of that. And I got what you were saying about it, you know, like just because a woman wakes up in the morning and puts all this stuff on doesn't mean that she's doing that to make herself look prepared. But to a male, that's what it looks like. Like
Right.
it's the male's perception of the woman. I think
Right.
she thought
And
that you
why
were
did
saying that
culture-
women did that on purpose to.
Oh no,
But I think that's
You're-
why she was getting a little riled because
you don't.
there was
realize,
a misinterpretation.
You don't realize what it does.
Right.
But you ought to.
Right. Exactly. I
'Cause if
had
you're
no
going
idea.
To do
I'm
that
so
to
glad I don't wear
yourself,
makeup.
What does that communicate to your audience, right?
Right. But you would have to know. You're putting it on to make yourself look prettier. Maybe
Yeah,
not
but-
necessarily
Yeah,
attract.
there are a lot of women that
other
would never
people.
go out of the house until they've done everything they can to look a certain way.
Sometimes I wonder what I would be like if I was that person.
I mean, I know some.
I'm just not.
I know some people that are like that. You know,
I like putting on makeup.
most of them are from Texas.
Sometimes. They are, and the big poofy hair. Oh yeah. Big poofy hair.
Cowboy boots,
Aquanet.
tight jeans,
Yeah.
with the little gold swirly doos on them. It says,
My
"Look-
grandfather
look at
used to
me,
call
look
me
at
the
me."
tennis shoe cowgirl because I was the one driving the cattle and I was wearing tennis shoes and I did not do anything I was supposed to do per the cowgirl image. Didn't do the cowboy hats, didn't do the tennis shoes, I didn't do the big belt buckles. Half the time it was twine. I've always just kind of been that person that just does what it takes to get it done, I guess.
But I think philosophy is good for us.
So, David Chalmers.
Oh, I'm still.
Haha.